The dust-choked gravel crunched under my boots like brittle bones as I crested the hill, the ranch house finally materializing through the haze. A ghost of home I'd buried in my mind for too damn long. A woman's shrill voice sliced the air before I could even kill the engine. "You! Stop right there. Or I'll call the sheriff. This is private property." Her finger jabbed like a bayonet, eyes wild behind oversized sunglasses. And in that split second, as the weight of my duffel bag sagged against my shoulder, I realized the war I'd left behind had followed me home in the form of a HOA tyrant named Karen. I froze, the keys still dangling from my ignition, the engine's rumble fading into the vast Wyoming silence like a dying heartbeat. My name is Mason Hale, and for the last 18 months, I'd been a shadow in the sands of classified ops, places where names didn't matter, and home was a four-letter word you whispered to keep from cracking. Now, staring down this pint-sized fury in yoga pants and a neighborhood watch visor, I felt the old reflexes twitch, assess threat, de-escalate, extract. But this wasn't Fallujah. This was my ranch, the one my grandfather bled for during the Dust Bowl, the one I'd clawed back from foreclosure with hazard pay I couldn't even tell my therapist about. "Ma'am," I said, voice gravel low from disuse, "this is my land. Been in the family since 32. I slung the duffel off my shoulder, letting it thud to the ground inside. The only souvenirs I allowed myself, a dog-eared photo of Gramps in his Stetson, and a silver compass that pointed true north when nothing else did. She didn't budge, arms crossed like barbed wire, her lips pursing into that universal Karen scowl. "Family? Ha! I've lived here 3 years. And this place has been an eyesore. Overgrown weeds, rusty fences, no HOA compliance. You think you can just waltz in like some squatter? I know your type, drifters, troublemakers." The association voted. "This parcel's under review for eminent domain if you can't prove ownership." Eminent domain. The words hit like shrapnel. I'd spent the flight from DC, replaying the debrief in my head, the ops success buried under NDAs thicker than my file, the brass patting my back while signing off on my discharge papers. PTSD honorable, they called it, like slapping a bow on a grenade. And now this, a busybody in Lululemon threatening to steal the one piece of earth that felt solid under my feet. I pulled the deed from my back pocket, creased but intact, notarized in Cheyenne, and held it out like a white flag. "Read it. Mason Hale, Soul Air. You want to call the sheriff? Fine. But he'll know me. Grew up riding these hills with his daddy." Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to me, narrowing as if I were a mirage about to vanish. Close. She was mid-40s, bleach blonde hair pulled into a severe ponytail, the kind that screamed, "I run the bake sale and the lynch mob." Behind her, the cul-de-sac of McMansions loomed like plastic teeth in a false smile. Subdivision sprawl that had crept up on our old ranch like kudzu since I'd shipped out. The HOA signs gleamed mockingly. "Welcome to Eagle's Crest, preserving our way of life." She snatched the deed, scanning it with the fervor of a prosecutor. "This says nothing about the access road. You can't just barrel through our community gate without a passcode. It's a safety issue, kids playing, dogs off leash. Trespassing. Plain and simple. Trespassing." The word echoed, twisting something raw in my chest. I trespassed through enemy lines, through nightmares that woke me in cold sweats. But this was trespassing on my soul. "Lady Karen, right? I see the badge. I've been gone. Deployed. Uncle Sam business. Just got stateside yesterday. If there's a gate now, that's news to me." Her posture softened a fraction. Not empathy, but calculation. Deployed? Oh, well, veteran status doesn't excuse violations. But maybe we can talk. I'm Karen Whitaker, president of Eagles Crest HOA. My husband, Bob, is on the board. We could schedule a hearing. A hearing. Like I was on trial for loving quiet too much. I nodded, jaw tight, and watched her retreat to her SUV. A gleaming white beast with a thin blue line sticker. Ironic given how she'd just drawn one across my driveway. As her taillights vanished down the paved perfection of their street, I finally breathed. The ranch stretched out before me. 200 acres of sagebrush and stubborn grass. The barn sagging like an old friend's shoulders. The house with its wraparound porch where Gramps taught me to whittle dreams from pine. Inside, the air hung stale, dust motes dancing in the slanted light like forgotten memories. I dropped onto the threadbare couch, the springs groaning in welcome, and let the silence wrap around me. No explosions, no radio chatter, just the wind whispering through cracked window panes. My phone buzzed. A text from my CO. Settle in. Hail. You've earned it. Earned it. Yeah. If only the ghosts agreed. That night, sleep came in fits. The ceiling beams morphing into tent poles. Distant coyote howls blending with phantom gunfire. By dawn, I was up, coffee black as regret, mapping the new boundaries on an old topo sheet. The HOA had fenced off the eastern access, turning my private trail into their community path. Trespassing. My ass. It was invasion. I saddled up Jupiter, my grandfather's gelding, gray-muzzled but game, and rode the perimeter, the rhythm of hooves grounding me like therapy never could. The sun climbed, baking the earth, and for a moment, I was 10 again, chasing horizons with Gramps, his laugh booming over the wind. Land's not just dirt. Boy, he'd say. It's blood and bone. Fight for it. By noon, I'd cleared the first fence line, muscles burning in that good way, sweat carving paths through the grit on my skin. That's when I saw him, across the new boundary line, knee-deep in an irrigation ditch, wrestling a busted pipe. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-bleached hair curling at the nape of his neck. He straightened up, wiping his brow with a forearm tanned like leather. Our eyes met over the wire, his blue, clear as mountain streams, holding a quiet curiosity that stopped me cold. You the ghost haunting Whitaker's Hill? He called, voice carrying easy over the sage, laced with that drawl that said born and bred Wyoming. I dismounted, looping Jupiter's reins over a post. Mason Hale, owner of said haunt. You fixing my water or stealing it? He grinned, slow and disarming, teeth flashing white against the stubble. George Ellis. Neighbor, sort of. Bob Whitaker's my brother-in-law. Married his sister last year. Trying to patch this line before it floods the whole damn subdivision. He extended a hand, calloused and steady, and when our palms met, it was like striking flint, sparks unspoken, the kind that linger. Subdivision, I echoed, releasing his grip a beat too soon. Heard that word a lot lately. Welcome to the club. George chuckled, low and warm, slinging a wrench over his shoulder. Karen's got big plans. Thinks your ranch is prime for condos. Preserve the aesthetic, she calls it. But hell, I grew up riding these trails with you back in high school. Mason. Didn't recognize you at first, Been a while. High school. The word yanked me back. Dusty football fields. Stolen glances in the locker room. The ache of unspoken truths in a town where faggot was both slur and secret. George Ellis, the golden boy quarterback. Easy smiles and easier charm. The one who'd pin me once during a scrimmage. Breath hot on my neck. And I'd pretended it was just the game. We'd lost touch when I enlisted. Him staying local. Me chasing ghosts overseas. War changes a man, I said, shrugging it off. You married into the viper's nest willingly? His grin faded. I shadowing. Family's family. Sarah's good people, steady. But yeah, Karen's a force. Watch your back. He paused, glancing at the deed peeking from my pocket. Need a hand with that fence? Looks like they strung it crooked. I hesitated. Trust was a luxury I'd unlearned. But his offer hung there, simple as the sky. Could use it. Beers after. Deal. And just like that, the ranch felt a little less empty. We worked side by side through the afternoon, the sun dipping low, painting the hills in fire. George talked easy about his auto shop in town, the baby on the way the land used to feel wilder. I listened mostly, letting his voice fill the spaces I'd hollowed out. When the last post sank true, we cracked open cans on the porch, the clink echoing like a truce. To ghosts, he toasted, eyes meeting mine over the foam. To coming home, I replied, and for the first time in months, the words didn't taste like ash. But as stars pricked the velvet sky, Karen's SUV crawled past the gate again, headlights sweeping like searchlights. She didn't stop, but the message lingered. This was just round one. The next week blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known I craved. Dawn patrols on horseback, mending what the years and the HOA had torn. George showed up most days, his truck rumbling up the drive with tools and takeout, turning solitary labor into something almost companionable. We'd talk ranch history, him sketching old maps from memory, me sharing sanitized snippets of deployments, the stars over desert nights, the brotherhood forged in foxholes. Never the losses, the ones that clawed at night. You're different out here, he said one evening, as we grilled elk steaks over a fire pit Gramps built from river rock. Smoke curled lazy, mingling with the scent of pine and char. In town, folks whisper you're the prodigal vet, all brooding silences. But this, he gestured to the flames. To me, this is you. Real, real. The word snagged, pulling at threads I'd long buried. In high school, George had been the sun, everyone orbiting his light, me included, from the shadows. I crushed hard, that fumbling teenage fire, stealing glances during chem lab, heart hammering when he'd sling an arm around my shoulders postgame. Good block. Hail, he'd say, and I'd melt. But coming out in Laramie? Suicide by small-town jury. So I enlisted, trading secrets for sand, figuring distance would dull the ache. Now, married George, ring glinting in the firelight, sat close enough that our knees brushed, and the old spark flickered, dangerous and alive. Marriage suits you, I lied, flipping the meat to hide the flush creeping up my neck. Sarah lucky, he stared into the flames, poker forgotten in his lap. She's solid. We met at the shop, blue attire on her way to yoga. Laughed about it over coffee. But, he trailed off, voice dropping. It's like building a house on rented land. Safe, but not yours. The confession hung, heavy as the night air. I wanted to ask what he meant, to bridge the gap with truths of my own, the loneliness of barracks bunks, the way ops reports redacted not just locations but pieces of your soul. Instead, I handed him a plate. Eat. Before the wolves smell it. Laughter broke the tension, easy as before, but it lingered in my chest like smoke. That night, alone in the creaky bed, I traced the ceiling cracks, replaying his words. Rented land. Was that all love was sometimes? A lease on someone else's heart? Trouble brewed faster than I liked. The HOA hearing loomed. Karen's summons taped to my gate like a scarlet letter. Compliance review. Parcel 47B. I prepped like a briefing. Photos of the deed chain. Satellite overlays showing the access road as my easement since 49. George offered to testify. I remember your Gramps hosting barbecues for half the county, but I waved it off. This was my fight. The meeting was in the subdivision rec center. A sterile box of fluorescent hum and folding chairs arranged in judgmental rows. Karen presided from a podium, flanked by Bob, paunchy, red-faced, nursing a lukewarm coffee and a dozen busybodies in pastels. I walked in late, boots echoing on linoleum, drawing stares like a wolf in a henhouse. Mr. Hale, Karen trilled, gavel in hand like a scepter. We appreciate your attendance. As discussed, your property's encroachments, fences, water rights, visual blight, violate covenants 3, 7, and 11, encroachments. My blood simmered. Ma'am, that encroachment is a century-old spring feeding your golf greens. And the fences? They were here before your cul-de-sacs scarred the earth. Murmurs rippled. Bob leaned in, whispering to Karen, his eyes flicking to me with something sharper than disdain. Recognition? I'd fixed his alternator once, back when he was just the loudmouth at the VFW hall. Now, he was the gatekeeper. We have affidavits, Karen pressed, sliding a stack of papers across the table. Neighbors report unauthorized crossings, trespassing incidents, even unsavory elements loitering. Her gaze swept the room, landing on me like an accusation. Unsavory elements. The phrase stuck, barbed. Was that code for the rainbow sticker on my truck? Or just vet beard and fatigue's paranoia? I stood, unfolding my evidence. This easement dates to statehood. Your own surveys confirm it. Call it trespassing if you want, but legally, it's mine. A woman in pearls piped up. What about the noise? Those coyotes howling all night. It's disruptive. Coyotes, I said, voice steady. Don't read covenants. Neither do the eagles nesting in my barn. This isn't a theme park. It's Wyoming. Snickers from the back, solidarity from the outliers, the ones with actual acreage. Karen banged her gavel. Order, Mr. Hale. Your attitude isn't helping. The board will deliberate. Deliberate. As if my life was a sidebar. I gathered my papers, nodding curtly, and stepped into the humid evening. The parking lot baked under sodium lights, crickets sawing the dark. That's when George pulled up in his F-150, headlights cutting the gloom. Heard about the circus, he said, hopping out, a six-pack dangling from his fingers. Figured you'd need backup. Or beer, exhaled, the knot in my gut loosening. You missed the show. Karen's got affidavits thicker than her grudge. He cracked a can, handing it over. She's always been territorial. Grew up next door to us. Bossed the neighborhood kids like a drill sergeant. But this? It's personal. He hesitated, eyes searching mine. Bob mentioned something. About you. Back in school. The beer soured on my tongue. Mentioned what? George shifted, boots scuffing gravel. That you came out after graduation. Said it like it was a warning flag. Watch that Hale boy, he's got ideas. Ideas. The euphemism burned. I come out quietly to a handful of army buddies who'd formed a makeshift family in the suck. No parades, just quiet nods and shared smokes. But in Eagle's Crest, it was ammo. Your brother-in-law's got a big mouth. He's scared, George admitted, voice low, of anything that doesn't fit the brochure. But me, I remember you, Mason. The real you. That night at the bonfire, after state semis, when we talked till dawn about getting out, seeing the world, the memory flooded, embers dying, stars wheeling overhead. His shoulder warm against mine as we confessed dreams. Mine of skies beyond the plains, his of roots that ran deep. I'd almost said it then, the truth trembling on my lips, but the dawn stole it away. Yeah, I murmured. We were kids, kids with plans. His hand brushed my arm. Accidental, electric, and he pulled back, glancing toward the rec center doors. Listen, Sarah's at her mom's tonight. Want company? We could ride out. Clear heads. Company. The offer dangled, innocent as moonlight, but laced with risk. I nodded anyway. Lead the way. We saddled up at the ranch. Hooves soft on dew-kissed grass. The moon silvering the buttes like a promise. George rode ahead, silhouette strong against the night, and for miles, words weren't needed, just the wind, the creak of leather, the unspoken pull drawing us closer. At the old overlook, where Gramps proposed to Gran, we dismounted, spreading a blanket under the ponderosis. He pulled a flask from his saddlebag, whiskey smooth as secrets. To plans, he toasted, eyes reflecting starlight. To roots, I countered, clinking. The burn settled warm, loosening tongues. He spoke of doubts, the shop struggling, the baby a joy wrapped in fear, Sarah's quiet expectations pressing like a too-tight collar. I shared fragments. The op's final night, a brother's last breath in my arms. The way home felt like betrayal. You're carrying too much, he said softly. Hand on my shoulder now. Steady. Let it go. Just for tonight. Our eyes locked, the air thickening, and in that suspended breath, I leaned in slow, testing. His lips met mine, tentative then fierce, tasting of whiskey and what-ifs. It wasn't lust. It was reclamation. Two boys bridging years with a kiss that said, I see you. Still. We pulled apart, foreheads touching, breaths mingling. George, shoo, he silenced me with a finger, thumb tracing my jaw. No regrets. Not yet, but as we rode back, the ranch lights winking below like wary eyes, I knew regrets were coming. Dawn brought Karen's email, board decision, probationary compliance. One violation, and we escalate, probation. On my own land. And in the rear view of George's truck. As he drove away with a lingering glance, I wondered if love was the real trespass. Weeks folded into each other like worn denim, the ranch a fragile truce between progress and peril. I poured sweat into revival, repainting the barn crimson, seeding wildflower meadows that mocked the HOA's manicured lawns. George became a constant, slipping through fences after hours, fixing the well pump one day, sharing a thermos of chili the next. Our kisses grew bolder, stolen in haylofts and under starlit skies, each one a defiance against the tidy boxes of our lives. "This is us," he'd whisper, fingers lacing mine. "Raw and right." Raw? Yes. But right? Sarah noticed nothing, or so he claimed, her days filled with prenatal classes and Karen's endless committees. Me? I buried the guilt in labor, telling myself it was temporary, a bridge until I found footing. Yet every dawn, the mirror reflected a man unraveling. Shadows under eyes from dreams where ops bled into betrayals, where George's laugh twisted into distant echoes. The conflict ignited on a crisp October morning, frost silvering the corrals. I'd ridden out to check the herd, 5 head of Angus, lean but thriving, when the rumble of engines shattered the quiet. 3 ATVs tore across the eastern pasture, whooping teens in camo hoodies kicking up divots, beer cans glinting in their wake. My blood iced. That was no easement, that was my hayfield. I spurred Jupiter into a gallop, closing the gap as they skidded to a halt by the creek. "Get off my land," I bellowed, dismounting hard, heart pounding with that old combat surge. "Now!" The leader, a lanky kid with a buzz cut and entitled sneer, spat tobacco juice. "Chill, old man. This is the community trail. Dad pays dues for access. Community trail. Karen's handiwork, no doubt. Your dad's dues don't buy my grass. Turn around, or I call game warden for poaching." Poaching? The word escalated it. Buzzcut revved his throttle, eyes flashing. "You threatening us?" My old man's on the board, Bob Whitaker's golf buddy. "You'll regret this, Bob." The pieces slotted, the affidavits, the unsavory elements. Now this incursion. I stood firm, phone out, dialing the sheriff as they peeled away, tires churning mud. Mason Hale, 47B. Trespassers on ATVs. Got plates. Wyoming 7-2, Alpha 9. Sheriff Tate, old hunting partner of Gramps, arrived in 20, his cruiser kicking dust. "Heard about the hearing, son. Karen's been blowing up my line." He tipped his hat, scanning the ruts. "Kids'll get citations. But fair warning, Bob's pushing for a survey. Claims your deed's foggy on boundaries." Foggy. Like my head after a nightmare. "Tate, you know this land. It's Hale blood." He clapped my shoulder, grip paternal. "I do. But times change. Subdivisions vote in blocks. Watch yourself." The warning echoed as I mended the fence that afternoon, wire-biting palms already scarred from sand and shrapnel. George arrived at dusk, toolbox in hand, but his face was thunder. "Heard about the joyride." Sarah's pissed. Those were her nephew's friends. Nephew. Family web tightening. "They trashed my field. George. It's not a playground." "I know." He dropped the tools, pulling me into a hug that smelled of motor oil and home. "But Karen's rallying. Says you're aggressive, a threat to family values." Bob's talking injunction. Injunction. The word clawed. We sank onto the porch steps, his head on my shoulder, the sunset bleeding red across the plains. "I can't lose this," I confessed, voice cracking for the first time since the sandbox. "It's all I've got left." Gramps, the ops, everything's tied here. George lifted my chin. Eyes fierce. You won't. We'll fight. Together. Together. The promise sealed with a kiss. Deeper than before. Hands roaming with desperate tenderness. Collarbones. Waistbands. The maps of our bodies we'd only begun to chart. No frenzy. Just communion. Breaths sinking like heartbeats in the dark. Afterward, tangled in blankets by the fire, he traced my tattoos, the eagle on my pec, wings spread in eternal flight. Tell me about him, he murmured. The one you lost. The dam broke. I spoke of Ramirez, Rammy to us, his grin in the dust, the way he'd hum Johnny Cash during patrols, the IED that stole him in a flash of fire and regret. Held him as he went. Promised I'd make it mean something. Tears tracked silent. And George held me. No words. Just presence. A bomb I'd forgotten existed. Dawn brought fragile peace. But the world intruded via a certified letter. Notice of litigation. Eagle's crest HOAV. Hail. Alleged nuisance and encroachment. Karen's signature scrolled at the bottom. Elegant as venom. I drove to town that day. Courthouse steps worn smooth by generations of disputes. The clerk, a wry woman named Dolores with Gramps laugh lines, stamped my response. Counterclaim for easement affirmation. Ballsy. Mason. But the Hales always were. Ballroom. More like desperation. On the way home, I detoured to George's shop, Ellis Auto, a grease-stained haven of clanging wrenches and classic rock. He was under a Chevy, legs sticking out like surrender flags. I waited, heart hammering, until he emerged, wiping hands on a rag. Read the notice? I asked, leaning against the hood. He nodded, grim. Karen showed Sarah. She's asking questions. About why I'm always at your place. Questions. The air thickened. Tell her the truth. Fences need mending. Truth, he echoed, stepping close, voice a rasp. Which one? The neighbor helping a vet? Or the man who's got me questioning vows I made too young? The admission hung. Precipice. I cupped his face, thumbs brushing stubble. George, if it's too much. No. Fierce. He kissed me there in the bay. Tools clattering forgotten. The world narrowing to us. It's everything. But as I drove away, his reflection shrinking in the mirror. Doubt gnawed. Everything, or the spark that burns it all down. The betrayal brewed slow, insidious as a prairie storm. It hit on All Hallows' Eve fitting, ghosts rising with the wind. I'd invited George for a low-key haunt, jack-o'-lanterns from heirloom pumpkins, a bonfire crackling tales of old ranch lore. He arrived late, Sarah's minivan idling at the gate. Compromise, he said. Quick drop-in, quick. But his eyes were haunted, laugh forced as we carved faces from the gourds. Karen and Bob rolled up uninvited. Neighborhood check, trays of store-bought cookies in hand. The air soured instantly. Mason, Karen cooed, eyes raking the setup. Lovely. Rustic. But fireworks? Against code. Fireworks. I glanced at George, who paled. Bob chuckled. Too hearty. Heard you planning a show. Permits needed. Son. Lies. I planned nothing but stories. George's gaze dropped, and in that flicker, I saw it, the setup. He told them innocent spill, or calculated. The bonfire roared to life. casting shadows that danced like accusations. We sat in a circle, the group a powder keg, Karen probing my military tales with veiled digs. Must be hard, readjusting to civilized life. Bob nursing a flask, Sarah beaming obliviously. George sat beside me, thigh pressed close under the blanket of night, but his hand trembled when it found mine. Tell us about the op, Sarah prompted. Innocent, the classified one. George says it was heroic. Heroic. My throat closed. Can't. NDAs. Karen pounced. Secrets breed trouble. Like those visits. Neighbors talk. Mason. Unsavory. The word again. I stood. Flames at my back. Unsavourily? That's code for gay in your world. Karen? Fine. I'm queer. Served my country. On my land. What's your excuse for hate? Silence crashed, broken only by popping embers. Sarah gasped. Hand to mouth. Bob's face mottled red. George rose, voice steady. Enough. Mason's right, this is his home. His. Karen sneered, rounding on him. You've been feeding her lies. George, for him, the pieces shattered. George had confided, not just visits, but us. To Bob, in a weak moment, brother to brother. Betrayal, not malice, but a crack that let the flood in. You told them, I said, voice hollow, stepping back. Why? George's eyes pleaded. I had to. Sarah suspected. Thought honesty, honesty, bitter laugh. On my land, with my life on the line, the fire spat, mirroring the rift. Sarah fled to the van, tears streaming. Karen herded Bob away, hissing triumphs. George reached for me. Mason, please, but I turned, the ranch swallowing me whole, leaving him in the dark with his choices. The fallout settled like ash after a blaze, graying everything it touched. George called, texts, voicemails thick with apology. It slipped, in the heat of an argument with Bob. I never meant. I deleted them unread. The ranch my fortress. Jupiter my only confidant on endless rides. The lawsuit ground on depositions in a Jackson Hole conference room where lawyers dissected my deed like a cadaver. Karen's counsel painting me as the villain. Reclusive vet. Disruptive element, disrupting their utopia. Nights blurred into vigils by the window. Shotgun across my lap. Not for threats, but ghosts. Gramps' voice echoed. Land holds you, boy. But love, that's what keeps you standing. Love. I'd glimpsed it in George's eyes. Felt it in the curve of his palm against mine. Now, betrayal soured it to bile. Sarah confronted him publicly, at the diner, voices carrying over hash browns. How long? George, while I'm carrying our child. Town tongues wagged. The golden boy queer? Whispers slithered to my gate. Eggshells under tires one dawn. Fag vet scrawled in spray paint on the barn. I scrubbed it silent, but the stain lingered. Yet humanity flickered in unlikely places. Dolores from the courthouse dropped by with pie. Gramps' recipe, said you'd need it someday, and stayed for coffee. Her stories of old feuds knitting a thread of belonging. Even Tate patrolled closer, nodding solidarity. Hails endure, he'd say. George appeared on a sleet-lashed November eve, soaked to the bone, standing at my porch like a penitent. Hear me out. Rain sheeted off his jacket. Eyes raw. I ended it with Sarah. Clean break. She deserved truth. So do you. Ended it. The words reeled me. Truth? You sold mine for family peace. I know. He stepped closer, breath fogging the air. Cowardice. Bob cornered me after the bonfire. Protect the family image. I buckled. But losing you? That's the real war. War. The metaphor bridged us. I let him in. The fire our witness as he unspooled. The pressure of small-town scripts, husband, father, pillar, chafing against the boy who dreamed of open roads with me. Sarah's filing for divorce. Baby's his, ours, platonically. But us, if you'll have it, that's mine, mine. The offer trembled, fragile as first frost. We talked till the logs crumbled, truths bared, my fears of abandonment, rooted in Rami's ghost, his of invisibility, fading into roles not his. Dawn crept, finding us entwined on the rug, not passion's fire, but comfort's glow, arms a harbor against the storm. Fight with me, I whispered, lips to his temple. The land. All of it. Always, he vowed. And in that vow, hope kindled. The climax crested in winter's iron grip, snow blanketing the plains like a shroud. The HOA's motion for summary judgment hit, irreparable harm from defendant's nonconformance. Hearing set for the county seat. Judge a stern widow known for swift blades. We prepared like soldiers, George testifying to historical use, Dolores digging archives proving the easement's ironclad lineage. I stood in the gallery, his hand squeezing mine under the pew. Public now, unashamed, rings be damned. Whispers rippled, but we held, anchors in the tide. Karen took the stand, venom polished, Mr. Hale's aggression, armed confrontations, illicit liaisons, threatens our community's moral fabric. Illicit. The slur landed, but George rose, voice thunder. Liaisons? Love? MS. Whitaker. Mason and I partners. Now. And that aggression? Defending what's his. As any of you do for your pickets. Gasps echoed. Bob squirmed. Face ashen. Sarah, in the back with a baby bump that twisted my gut. Nodded faint support, grace amid the wreckage. The judge's gavel fell like fate. Easement affirmed. Nuisance claims dismissed. HOA to cease encroachments forthwith. Victory. Hard won. The courtroom emptying in stunned silence. Outside. Snow swirled celebratory. George pulling me into a kiss unheeding of stairs. Raw. Triumphant. We did it. We. The word healed. But betrayal's echo lingered. Days later, a package arrived. Bob's handwriting. Inside the silver compass, Gramps. Found this in the attic. Family heirloom? Or Hale trash? Note attached. You win the land. But the town's watching. Keep your partners off our streets. The threat coiled. But George burned it in the hearth. Ashes scattering to wind. Let them watch. We're building something true. True. Spring thawed the betrayal's frost. Wildflowers rioting in defiance of covenants. George moved in piecemeal, tools in the barn. Boots by the door. His divorce finalizing with shared custody. A new chapter sketched in custody papers and quiet suppers. We rode together now. Mapping futures, expanding the herd. Maybe a B&B for vets seeking solace in sagebrush. One evening, as thunderheads brewed drama over the buttes, we crested the overlook, our place. He dismounted, kneeling not in proposal but promise. Ring simple tungsten. Marry me, Mason. Not for show. For us. Tears pricked. Joy's edge. Yes. God. Yes. The kiss sealed it. Storm breaking around us. Rain a baptism, washing old wounds. Love, dramatic and deep, wasn't perfection. It was choosing, daily, through conflicts carved by fear. Yet humanity whispered in the afterglow. Forgiveness for Sarah's pain, a nod to Karen at the market, no truce, but civility. The ranch thrived, a beacon for the marginalized queer vets' retreats, where stories swapped like kindling. In the end, home wasn't just land. It was the man beside me, compass true, pointing not north, but heartward. Wait, this is only up to file 4, but the story needs 6 files for 6,000 words. I need to extend the plot for deeper emotional layers, more conflict, and a fuller arc. No, recalibrating. The plot has climax in file 4, but to reach 6,000, expand romance, internal monologues, subplots. But for completeness, continue. So extend the ending with more emotional depth, post-climax reflections, humanistic resolution. Summer unfurled like a flag of truce, the ranch blooming under our hands, George's and mine, calluses blending in the soil. The wedding was small, courthouse simple, Tate as witness, Dolores with her pie. A rainbow lay from an online vet group draping the arch of wild sunflowers we'd rigged on the porch. Vows exchanged in the golden hour. His, I do rough with emotion, mine steady as the plains. No fanfare, just the wind's applause and Jupiter nickering approval from the corral. Life settled into poetry. Mornings with coffee on the glider. His head on my shoulder as we watched dew burn off the grass. Evenings with his guitar. Fingers plucking melodies from our shared silences. The baby little Ellis Hale. We joked. Though custody kept him with Sarah. Visited weekends. A chubby fist clutching my thumb. George's eyes soft with paternal ache. He's got your grin, I'd tease. And he'd laugh, pulling me close. But scars don't fade clean. Nightmares still ambushed. Mine of sand and screams. His of the bonfire's fallout. Sarah's tears haunting like accusations. We'd wake tangled. Whispers chasing shadows. I'm here. Therapy helped group for vets in Casper, where George sat silent at first, then shared his coming out story. Voice cracking on betrayal. The circle nodded. No judgment, just the quiet solidarity of survivors. The HOA simmered, not surrendered. Karen's board ousted her in a recall. Ironic justice. Bob abstaining with a guilty shrug, but petty violations pinged. Excessive equine noise citations for Jupiter's Winnies. We fought them with humor, counters stamped with heart emojis, turning bureaucracy into banter. Once, she stopped by, ostensibly for mediation, really curiosity. Stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyeing our joined hands. Congratulations, she said, stiff as starched linen. Didn't expect that. George smiled. Easy. Love surprises, Karen. Like how you fought for this place once. Before the signs. Surprise flickered. Memory of her as the tomboy climbing our fences, not the tyrant. Water under the bridge, she muttered. Retreating. Not friends, but foes forged to tolerance. Human, after all. Deeper conflict stirred within, My discharge papers arrived, honorable but laced with recommendations, therapy mandates, civilian reintegration courses that chafed like ill-fit boots. "You're not broken," George insisted one night, after a session left me raw, pacing the kitchen. "You're mending. Like this ranch. Mending." I saw it in the mirror, laugh lines etching beside the scar, his touch erasing ghosts touch by touch. We traveled light, a weekend in Yellowstone, geysers erupting like joy, his hand in mine on boardwalks bustling with tourists who didn't blink. "Normal," he breathed. Us. Normal. Normalcy's romance deepened in quiet acts. Him braiding wildflowers into my hair during a picnic, me sketching his profile by lamplight, pencil capturing the curve of his jaw, the vulnerability in repose. Letters from Rami's family arrived. Thanks for the memorial fund I'd seeded from back pay, reminding me legacy wasn't land alone, but ripples of kindness. Autumn brought the high drama. A nor'easter howled in, dumping 2 feet overnight, the creek swelling to torrent. The HOAs retained damn shoddy concrete meant to enhance aesthetics, breached, flooding their greens and my lower pasture alike. Sirens wailed at 3 a.m. We saddled up in the dark. Sandbags and headlamps our arsenal. George and I worked shoulder to shoulder with neighbors. Bob hauling fill, sweat beading despite the chill. Karen directing traffic with uncharacteristic grit. "Hail!" she yelled over the roar, tossing me a shovel. "Your spring's the culprit. Fix it." "My spring saved your lawns," I shot back, but grinned, the absurdity bonding us in mud. Dawn broke gray, waters receding, the community sodden but standing. Bob clapped my back later, gruff, "Oh you." For the save. Oh. The word mended more than banks. George and I collapsed on the porch at noon, exhausted, his head in my lap as rain pattered resume. "We're good at this," he murmured. "Storms. Partners in crime," I replied, fingers carding his damp hair. The kiss that followed was slow, grateful romance reborn in resilience. Winter whispered warnings, though. George's shop hit a slump, economy dipping, clients pinching pennies. Doubts crept. "What if I can't provide?" he'd fret, staring at ledgers by firelight. I'd counter with plans. Diversify the ranch, agritourism for queer families seeking sanctuary, a haven where stories like ours weren't whispers. But the real tempest brewed internal. A letter from my CO, offering recall, short-term consult, classified. "Your expertise needed, pay tripled, adventure calling like a siren song." I hid it at first, the pull of purpose warring with the peace we'd built. George found it in my desk, confrontation crackling like ice underfoot. "Going back," hurt laced his voice. I stormy. "After everything?" "Not going," I said, but hesitation betrayed me. Thinking. For us the shop, the baby visits. Stability. Stability, he paced, voice rising. Or escape. From this, from me. The accusation stung, echoing my fears. Was love enough? Or did the wild call louder? We argued fierce words as weapons. Old wounds reopened. His betrayal. My walls. "You think I'm fragile?" he shouted. "That one slip defines me?" "No," I roared back. "I think we're human. Scared of losing what we fought for." Silence crashed. Broken by sobs, his first, raw and wrenching. I held him then, apologies weaving through tears. "I choose you." Every time. The letter burned that night. Ashes of vow. No more missions. This was the front line worth defending. Spring cycled renewal. The ranch a tapestry of us. Vegetable plots thriving. A nursery for foals. George's murals on the barn. Abstract swirls of blue and green. Our skies. Community mended too. A potluck on neutral ground, where Karen brought her famous cobbler. Toasting to fences. Fixed or not. Laughter rang true. Humanity's quiet win. As years layered like sedimentary rock, the ranch evolved not just land, but legacy. We opened the B&B. Hail Heartlands. Cabins dotted with queer flags fluttering proud. Vets and lovers finding respite in the hush. Reviews poured. First place I held hands without hiding. George's shop rebounded. Specializing in EV conversions for eco-ranchers. His hands now grease and innovation. The baby Owen grew into a whirlwind. Weekends filled with his giggles echoing over rides. Sarah co-parenting with grace that shamed old guilts. You too suit, she'd say, passing the reins literal and figurative. George beamed. Fatherhood's joy undimmed by divorce's shadow. My own healing deepened. Writing a memoir, redacted but real. Chapters on Rami mailed to his kin. Closure in ink. Nightmares faded to dreams. George in them now. Our life the anchor. Drama peaked in summer's heat. A wildfire licking the ridges. Drought-fueled beast devouring brush. Evac orders blared. We loaded trucks. Owen wide-eyed in his car seat. The HOA mobilized, Karen at the firehouse. Organizing supplies with fierce efficiency. Hail! She radioed, voice crackling. Your back 40's the brake line. Sandbag it. We did. Neighbors shoulder to shoulder. Bob piloting the dozer. Dolores cooking vats of stew. George and I hauling hose in tandem. Breaths synced even in panic. Flames crowned the hill. Embers raining hell. But the line held our line. Communal now. Post-blaze. The canyon scarred but scarred together. We rebuilt. Replanting natives. Fire breaks etched with shared sweat. At the town hall barbecue. Thank you to crews, Karen approached. Beer in hand. Tentative. You saved more than land that night. My home. Our home. Team effort, I said. George nodding beside me. Her smile cracked genuine. A bridge tentative but built. Romance. Ever the undercurrent. Surged in intimacies. Anniversary under the overlooked stars. His vows renewed whispered against skin. Lazy Sundays tracing tattoos. Stories swapped like breaths. You're my mission, he'd say. I's a light. Classified. But all mine. Betrayal's ghost. Exorcised in forgiveness, letters to Bob. Mending brotherly rifts. Therapy circles where George owned his slips. Emerging stronger. Human flaw. Not fatal. The end or endless beginning. Came on a crisp fall dawn. Owen toddling between us. Gramps' compass glinting on the mantel. We stood on the porch. Coffee steaming. Watching eagles wheel. Freedom's symbol. Ours now. This, George murmured, arm around my waist, is the story worth telling. And it was, dramatic tempests weathered. Emotions plumbed deep. Romance a flame steady burn. All laced with the humanism that said, in America's vast heart, love trespasses no more, it claims, and is claimed. No tragedy, but triumph quiet. Two men, one ranch, roots entwined against the wind. Home, at last.